Okay, we're going to take a look at the 95% confidence interval and how we create that and how we look at it and sort of look at how a software kind of creates this confidence interval so we can interpret it. So I'm using Inzight because Inzight does a really good job of animations and sort of explaining how the software creates a 95% confidence interval. You don't need to talk about how it does it, you just need to be able to talk about the confidence interval, but it's nice to see how it's created so you have some understanding. So we're going to pick basically gender as we did before, and we're going to pick percent body fat, which is what we have a graphic for already, and you can see that Inzight pulls out of the data that I have a sample and then splits that sample up by gender, by male and female. So this is a dot plot for females and males, and it's percent body fat. Okay, and then we're going to do an analysis of this. Now we're going to pick median, not mean, and that's because we've talked about the fact that mean can be affected by unusual bits of data or outliers. It gets pulled by that, and so we tend to use median because it's a bit more stable on average. It's not affected by outliers. And I'm going to record the choice here. So what Inzight's going to do is create a dot plot and mark the medians for the percent body fat for the males and the females. But it's also going to draw this nice little arrow. And I like this because this shows me the difference between the medians. So, I mean, I can subtract it, I can do the calculation, although it's not telling me what this number is. But what it's telling me is the difference between the medians. So basically it's saying in my sample that females' percent body fat is 9.31 units higher, bigger than males. That's the difference. All right, so that's the original sample. Now we know what we're going to do is we're going to resample. And we're going to resample 1,000 times so that we can create a confidence interval. So if I just show you one resample, I'm not sure if it's going to animate this or not, but anyway, let's just see what happens. No, it just drops it down. So here's a resample, Bootstrap resample from the original. We've pulled out individuals and we've created another sample basically, but it's a resample from the original. It looks very, very similar to this one, but it's actually a different. You can see the distributions are a little bit different. The shape of the dot plot's a little bit different. The median is in a little bit different place, and that arrow is a bit of a different length. Now, we're going to do this 1,000 times, and we're going to get different medians and different positions of the boxes every time we do this, just like if we were pulling out a sample from the population. But I also want to show you what happens when we press this next thing, which is start to show the Bootstrap distribution. So what happens is Inzight takes that arrow, which is the difference of the medians, and drops it down into this number line here. This is called the Bootstrap distribution. It is showing us the difference between the medians in the resample. Now how you read this is basically the females tends to be the bigger group, so that gets on the bottom. This little dotted line kind of represents the male median. And so then what happens is when you take a resample and you drop down the difference of the medians down here, that's basically showing you how far away the female's median is from the male's. So we use this dotted line to sort of represent sort of a standardized male median, and then we show the difference from that. So this is the female. This first resample was about 9 units bigger. So the difference was about 9, and then this seems to be about 7, maybe a difference of 7. And we do another resample. We get a different difference. They're about in the same ballpark, but they're different. So this one's very close. It's, again, very close to being 9. We do another one. It drops down another difference, and now we start to build this distribution. And this distribution is the difference in the medians. So we subtract whatever these numbers are, and we get a difference of the medians, and we plot it on a dot plot on a number line. And so we start to see, again, if this represents the males, this represents basically the difference between the male median and the female median, and how much really bigger the female's percent body fat is from the males. Now we want to do this 1,000 times because we want to build a very strong confidence interval from a lot of different resamples. So we'll do this 1,000 times. And we can see that the medians and the arrows are changing and changing size. The difference is changing. The position of the medians is changing significantly, particularly for the females. Males are staying a little bit more steady, and we end up getting this fairly ranging set of medians for females, percent body fat, and one that's not quite so ranging for the males. But what it's showing us is that no matter how many, we took 1,000 resamples, females' median percent body fat is always sort of bigger than the males. And that's being displayed here because if this little dotted line represents the males, females are always somewhere between, 7 units to like 12 or 12 units maybe, whatever, percent body fat. So their percent body fat is anywhere between 7 or 8 to say 12 units higher, bigger than males. So we produce this distribution that kind of shows us where most of the medians fall, and they fall somewhere between these numbers here. Now we don't stop there because that's not giving us, that gives us a general confidence interval, but we want an exact confidence interval. So what I do is I say show the CI, which is the confidence interval, and Inzight will drop down the difference in the original sample, which was the 9.31, and then drop off the really, this is like the 5%, the extreme edges of the distribution, and show me what the confidence interval is. So these numbers, this is basically what I say is, I'm 95% confident that back in the population, the difference between the two groups would be somewhere between 7.84 units and 10.92 units in percent body fat, whatever the units for percent body fat are. And so we don't rely on this sort of point estimate from my one sample. The difference would be 9, because if I took another sample, I know that that difference will change. But I'm pretty confident that the difference will range somewhere between 7.84 and 10.92. And the other thing that's significant here is these are positive numbers, which basically means that the girls, the females, were always, no matter whether this changed or not, these changed, but no matter how much change there was in the female and the male's medians, females were always bigger percent body fat. And they were bigger by somewhere between 7.84 and 10.92 percent body fat units, bigger than males. So the 9.31 is what the difference was from my sample, and I can make some conclusions based on my sample, and I can suggest that back in the population it looks as though females have a bigger percent body fat, and in my sample was by 9.31 units. But then when I go to do a confidence interval, I can be a little more exact with my explanation and confidently say that the range of percent body fat between males and females, the difference in the medians will range somewhere between 7.84 and 10.92 units. Females always being bigger in their percent body fat, which is what I would expect.